What's going on, guys? Nathan here, back again with another set review video. Today we're taking a look at Foundations, which releases on November 15th. This set is designed for standard, being standard legal for approximately 5 years according to Wizards of the Coast, but we are going to be evaluating these cards from the Commander format perspective to see what is playable within Commander. And really quick, before we get into the cards, just like to give a quick shout out to my other videos that I'll be making. This particular video is around the best white cards, but I'll also be making blue, red, black, and green videos, and also colorless and multicolored. So stay tuned for those. Those will be coming out in the next couple of days here. And also, before we get into the cards, just like to ask, if you enjoy this type of content, leave a like on the video and subscribe if you want to see more awesome free Magic content from me. And without further ado, we can hop right into it here. Starting us off, we have Valkyrie's Call, 5-mana enchantment. Whenever a non-token, non-angel creature you control dies, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it. It has flying and is an angel in addition to its other types. Now, there's two ways to really use this card. First is defensively against a board wipe, more just ensuring protection for your board if somebody were to cast like a Blasphemous Act or something. But honestly, I think this is better used as a proactive combo piece with sacrifice outlets, such as Phyrexian Altar, Ashnod's Altar. We've seen this before with Luminous Broodmoth, where this one in particular says whenever creature control without flying dies, return to the battlefield under its owner's control with a flying counter on it. That one definitely sees play. I actually had Luminous Broodmoth in my Carador deck a while back, which was Aristocrats themed. There's also the less played Promise of Tomorrow, but it's also a similar effect here. But honestly, I think Valkyrie's Call should basically read as you get to double your sacrifice effects, because if you combo this with something like a Phyrexian Altar, you're going to be just sacking your whole board. It's going to be coming back, and then you're going to probably sacrifice again for even more value. And honestly, it's nice that they come back with a +1/+1 counter and flying. If you care about sending your little dudes into combat, maybe you just need to finish somebody off that's only about 10 health, and if you have a few guys on the board, that power pump might be useful in niche scenarios. But ultimately, this is going to read similar to actually Wilhelt the Rock Cleaver. Quick shout out to Wilhelt the Rock Cleaver, one of my favorite zombie commanders. The reason why Wilhelt is so great in the zombie archetype is because it allows you to sacrifice your zombies effectively twice, because whenever the zombie dies, it creates a decayed zombie, and so you can sacrifice the decayed zombie again. So Valkyrie's Call, I think, should be treated much like Wilhelt in terms of finding combos where you can just be sacrificing things for value, such as a Junji the Midnight Sky, which is one of the best things to sacrifice in the Commander format. 5-mana 5/5. Usually what people will do is when it says when it dies, choose one. Each opponent discards 2 cards and loses 2 life. So imagine this guy coming back again, and then ultimately, if you have a Phyrexian Altar on the battlefield, for example, then you'll be making 2 mana and forcing your opponents to discard 2 cards each, which is just absolutely insane, super disgusting. So I think this would probably go in your typical Aristocrats type of decks. Teysa Karlov is a classic. You get to have 4 times your death triggers, which is absolutely insane. That's a total Commander style of gameplay right there. And then Elenda the Dusk Rose, also pretty cool, because it would go back onto the field. You would get the death trigger to create all those vampire tokens with lifelink. And then if you let it hit your graveyard by choosing it to not go to the command zone and then have the Valkyrie's Call trigger resolve, it would go back on the battlefield, and then you could start putting counters back on Elenda. So just a nice option for Aristocrats decks there. And if you're running Luminous Broodmoth, you probably also want Valkyrie's Call in your deck. Next, we have Hare Apparent, 2-mana 2/2 Rabbit Noble. When this creature enters, create a number of 1/1 white rabbit creature tokens equal to the number of other creatures you control named Hare Apparent. A deck can have any number of cards named Hare Apparent. So a nice little addition to the Thrumming Stone style of decks. We have seen this style of effect before with Templar Knight, particularly in white, is the only other card that says a deck can have any number of cards named, X. And then you'd have to go into other colors, so like Slime Against Humanity is another example in green. But I think that Hare Apparent, compared to Templar Knight, is a lot more aggro, definitely a lot more beat down, because this is going to be making a ton of tokens. So you start comboing this with things like Idol of Oblivion, where you draw a card once a turn if you made a token. You're welcoming vampires, Takacious Welcome, Enduring Innocence, things like that. And all of a sudden you have a giant card draw engine for every single Hare Apparent that you slam on the board. And also, if you were to combo this with something like, I believe it's the Medallion, that would be Pearl Medallion in white. I just had to double check which one it was. Then you can start slinging these things out for 1 mana each. And if you're drawing a card every single time that you have something enter that's power 2 or less, or maybe even like a Delny, Streetwise Mentor out on the field, you're going to just make a ton of tokens, and this is going to be incredible. So I I think that Heir Apparent is one of the best sort of Thrumming Stone style cards we've seen before. And of course, that brings us to the actual Thrumming Stone here, where you're going to want to be playing one of these 5-mana legendary artifacts. The spells you cast have Ripple 4, which means whenever you cast a spell, you may reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may cast spells with the same name as a spell from among the revealed cards without paying their mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library. And then, of course, comboing it with just big card draw effects like Enduring Innocence is one of the more power crept examples recently from Duskmourn that I think would be great to combo in an Heir Apparent deck. So you could also run this as like Rabbit Tribal. So I have some commander recommendations for like Phineas Ace Archer, which I think is actually really good. For only 2 mana, whenever Phineas Ace Archer attacks, put a 1/1 counter on each other creature you control that's a token or a rabbit. Then if creatures you control have total power 10 or greater, draw a card. So if this guy survives 1 combat and can attack multiple times, maybe you give him Indestructible because you're drawing so many cards that you can afford to run some of these one-time Indestructible effects so he survives combat, or gives him Unblockable somehow, maybe flying. Then you can start really buffing your rabbits on the field. And then Kadira is a different option for Rabbit Tribal, but I'm not sure that I could recommend it over Phineas just because Kadira is a token producer herself. And so with Heir Apparent, you're so already heavily producing tokens that I don't know if you need a commander to do that same thing. So anyway, something to consider. So that is Heir Apparent. Next we have Raise the Past, 4-mana sorcery, return all creature cards with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, which is an absolutely incredible effect. Holy crap, for 4 mana we get to reanimate essentially our whole graveyard, assuming that we can meet the condition of having all of our creatures be mana value 2 or less. One thing that is cool with this is that your X cost creatures can potentially meet that, or sort of cheat around that stipulation. So something like a Jacked Rabbit, for example, if you were to be in that Rabbit Tribal deck, you can certainly reanimate that with Raise the Past as well. We've seen this somewhat before. I think Ascend from Avernus is still the king of all reanimation effects when it comes to white, which says for X and 3 white, return all creature and planeswalker cards with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, and then it gets exiled. It's just one of the best reanimation effects in white, period. And I think Raise the Past, if you built around it, would probably be better because it is cheaper by 1 mana for an equivalent effect with Ascend from Avernus, and it is less pip intensive. And there's also Return to the Ranks, which we've seen before. X into white, sorcery with Convoke, return X target creature cards with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So if you happen to be sacrificing creatures, putting them in the graveyard, or just running a general aggro strategy where you don't care about your creatures dying and you can just slam these sorcery speed reanimation style effects on the battlefield, definitely recommend Raise the Past. And like I said, you can cheat it out a little bit with those X type of cost spells like Hangerback Walker or a Jacked Rabbit. And I think also this would be great just to combo with value pieces like a Soul's Attendant that you really want to have on the battlefield. And honestly, if oftentimes you have to use these things to chump a big attack, and so if it hits the graveyard, you could just reanimate it and get that value back with Raise the Past. And then, of course, this goes straight into a Lurrus of the Dream Den deck. I mean, there's no question there. And of course, I have Teysa Karlov representing all of the little weenie type of aristocrats decks out there. Next, we have Exemplar of Light, 4-mana 3/3 creature angel with flying. Whenever you gain life, put a 1/1 counter on this creature. Whenever you put 1 or more +1/+1 counters on this creature, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn, which is great. So Exemplar of Light is the best style of effect we've seen so far, where if you gain life, you draw a card. Dawn of Hope makes you pay for the card, and so does Well of Lost Dreams, and that is why I don't run these in my life gain decks. However, Exemplar of Light is an engine for multiple things. Not only does it indirectly read whenever you gain life, draw a card once per turn, but also if you happen to care about putting 1/1 counters on your creatures, then this would trigger as well. And so it's going to be just a great draw engine for both +1/+1 counter and life gain decks. And of course, if you have a Soul's Sister or the Soul, any of the Soul Sisters really, this is going to be drawing you multiple cards a turn because your opponents are just going to be playing creatures upon creatures, and you're going to be getting all of that value. Now, this will go into your what I call Archangel of Thune type of decks, where if you care about getting a bunch of little life gain triggers, this is going to be just a great engine to slam into those decks. So Karlov of the Ghost Council will be representing those types of decks that just cares about the number of incremental ways you can gain life. And then Olaro, Ageless Ascetic, comboed with Exemplar of Light, even while it's in the command zone, will just draw you a card every turn, which is absolutely stellar. And next we have Cat Collector. This card is purely here for the art. Let's take a look and zoom in to our Cat Collector art here. Look at all of the cute little kitties. Look at him, he's just taking a nap on the shelf. And this one is playing with the little potion or something. Oh, it looks like a piece of meat actually, as I see a little piece of meat here. But look, we got a curious little cat over there. Oh my gosh, I absolutely love this art. Horrible card, but absolutely love the art. And you know what would make this art even better is if this fella right here was reaching towards these delicious smelling onions, trying to stir up some mischief within the Cat Collector art. But anyway, that is Cat Collector. Next we have Arahbo, the first Fang, 3-mana 2/2 cat avatar. Other cats you control get +1/+1. Whenever Arahbo or another non-token creature you control enters, create a 1/1 white cat creature token. My goodness, is this an absolute value producer in limited. Of course, this fits into your cat style of decks. There's a lot of different lords out there, and I think that's just a better version of Regal Caracol, although, and I'm not sure how exactly that's pronounced, but with Regal Caracol, the other cats do get lifelink, so you're getting a little bit of life gain synergy there, but I do think that Arahbo actually has the potential to create more cats than Regal Caracol for less mana, 2 less mana in fact. That's a giant difference. And King of the Pride is of course another just good cat lord within those Rin and Siri type of decks, and Arahbo on its own, because it gives the buff to all the creatures, automatically makes it a 2/2, which is great. I mean, it's basically 4 power on board for only 3 mana, which is in Commander even still like decent, because you can start, you know, stacking these things up and just making a bunch of cats. Once you get more cats in your hand to cast, such as King of the Pride, I think this is just an instant slam in those cat tribal decks. Rin and Siri is a classic cat tribal deck. I actually have one myself, and I've been thinking about brewing around Arahbo Roar of the World, just because it is my only the only commander that has eminence that I have not brewed out yet. But this cares about cats, giving them +3/+3 every single turn, which is pretty cool. So that's Arahbo, the first Fang, absolute stellar include. Then we move on to some honorable mentions. So these are cards that are worth mentioning, but might not actually see a lot of light of day necessarily within the Commander format, but I just wanted to bring them up to you guys. Guarded Heir, 6-mana 1/1 lifelink. When it enters, create 2 3/3 white knight creature tokens. This is an expensive effect, but if you happen to care about flickering your creatures, I could see it being included in like a human tribal type of deck. If it gets some sort of buff and you're able to swing out with like a big lifelinking body, that's pretty cool, but really you'd probably want to care about either the human creature type, the knight creature type, or just having a lot of flicker effects, and I would definitely say that you'd have to be in a flicker deck for this to be worth it. I don't even know that I would run this in just a base human tribal deck like a AON or something like that, but Guarded Heir, decent pick from maybe flicker decks. Kind of. All right, and then we have both Hinterland Sanctifier and Dazzling Angel. These are half Soul Sisters, where they only care about creatures entering on your side of the battlefield, but every time that happens, you gain 1 life. So if you care about incremental life gain triggers like your Karlov deck, this would be the creature. And honestly, I don't know, these are probably not even crack like the top 5 incremental life gain producers, because I think there's the Soul Sisters are 2, and then I think there's one other creature that I can't remember off the top of my head, but I believe it costs 2 white pips that I'll have on the screen here. Those would definitely be my first 3, and then if you really wanted like a bunch of incremental life gain, then like these would be probably, you know, below, maybe in that 5 or 6 range. So anyway, I just wanted to mention them. It's another way to gain life with just a bunch of little life gain triggers. Then we have Helpful Hunter, which is a 2-mana 1/1. When this creature enters, draw a card. And guess what? Sometimes these are just great vegetable creatures to have on the battlefield. I really like playing these creatures in like a control style of deck. We've seen this before with Spirited Companion. When it ETBs, draw a card. A Splitskin Daw, when it enters, draw a card, then discard a card unless you control another creature with power 2 or less. This is from Duskmourn. These are just kind of nice sometimes to not only like flicker if you care about either the cat creature type or you're just running in them in a flicker deck, but I think it's just good to put out a blocker early on, and then if you happen foundation. If your game plan is around casting a board wipe on turn 4 or 5, which is what some control decks want to be doing, then I really just like having a blocker to fend off some of that early chip damage. You actually draw the card so that you're not down a card necessarily, and then you can, cast your board wipe, and you don't care because you've already gotten your value off of the cantrip and creature. So that's helpful Hunter. Then we have Crystal Barricade, 2 mana 0/4 defender. You have hexproof, prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to other creatures you control. If you happen to care about giving yourself hexproof and preventing all non-combat damage, I think this is really more of a meta call. I wouldn't really put this in any generic deck because we've already seen a lot of effects like this, like Aegis of the Gods, Keen Ear to Sentry. The big thing that Crystal Barricade brings to the table is that it has 4 toughness and it prevents all non-combat damage that would be dealt to other creatures you control, and that's just a little bit niche. It's nice to have a 0/4, but I mean in Commander, past like turn 4 or 5, that's really not that impressive. So that means we'd really have to care about the non-combat damage portion. So if you happen to be in a heavy meta where creatures are dealing non-combat damage, like if you're against a Sir Conrad deck that terrorizes your table, then maybe consider a Crystal Barricade for your deck. All right, so that brings us to our top 3 weight cards. These are the best that I think that are from the Foundation set. And if we could get a quick drum roll, please, we have Raise the Past, Valkyrie's Call, and Arahbo, the first Fang. Raise the Past is going to be delivering an insane amount of value. We're going to see this card a lot. Valkyrie's Call, once again, Aristocrats decks are going to absolutely love this card. Teysa Karlov decks are going to absolutely love this card. And then if you happen to be running a lot of cats, I think Arahbo is just one of the best creature cards to see in your deck, being a non-token cat itself. So that is the video, guys. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like on it and subscribe, and make sure to check out my other videos that I'll be producing. Up next is blue, but I'll also be producing these in Wooburg order. So blue, black, red, green, and then colorless and multicolored. I think I'll probably combine into a 6th video there. So anyway, that's the video, guys. Hopefully see you all in the next one. Peace.